What's really going on, if you don't want refugees seeking asylum in the United States, then stop overthrowing their democratically elected governments and stealing their resources. It's not effing rocket science. That's what's going on. Why are there all these people here? Why are they fleeing here? It's because the United States keeps overthrowing their governments and creating a hellscape for them to live in. Drug violence, right-wing militias, all kinds of violence. And so here they are talking about, I'll show, here's Aaron Mate and Katie Halper from Useful Idiots. They were talking about this. And so here's I don't know what this guy's position is, but he's in the administration, and he's talking about the immigration problem. So this is the real what's the real problem? Why is Governor DeSantis sending him? Why are there all these immigrants coming to Texas? Why do we have an immigration problem in the United States? Why don't people want to stay in their own countries? Well, this got brought up on the CBS Morning Show, and let's watch.
There's a larger problem here that, frankly, we did not face when I was in office. We were dealing principally with the Northern Triangle countries, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, and Mexico. This problem has become hemispheric. In addition to those countries, you now have Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela, who are not cooperating with us. Their countries are literally imploding, and there's migration to the north and the south.
Okay. So why are those countries A, imploding, and why B, won't they work with us, with the United States? Aaron Mate is going to let you know.
So he says that Venezuela, Cuba, and Nicaragua, their countries are literally imploding and they're not cooperating with us. So that raises two questions. Why are these countries supposedly imploding and why are they not cooperating? Right. Well, the reason why they're not cooperating is because the U.S. has been trying to overthrow these governments for many years now. Cuba going back to the 1960s. Venezuela, there's been 2 U.S.-backed coups there over the last 20 years. Nicaragua was subjected to a terror war by the Reagan administration in the 1980s that left a lot of people dead in Nicaragua and has since then faced ongoing economic strangulation and subversion by the U.S. So all these countries have been targeted for regime change. And as a part of that, the U.S. has imposed these sanctions on all these countries that have made their economic situation a lot worse. Venezuela's economy has contracted right when the U.S. imposed sanctions to destroy its biggest sector, the oil sector. And none of that ever gets mentioned on these shows. And so the question of why they're suffering and why they're not cooperating is just, it's taken to be because they're just, they're not cooperative and they're not good partners. No, it's because the U.S. has been trying to overthrow their government. So why would they cooperate with you?
Right. Why aren't they cooperating in regime changing themselves? That would be so much more cooperative of them. That's the kind of collaboration that we seek. Yes.
Also, by the way, I'm not sure about the numbers from Nicaragua. Relatively to Central America, migration from Nicaragua has always been pretty low compared to the other countries, especially other countries like Honduras, which the U.S. has destabilized for many years, including the coup there in 2009, which Johnson's administration was a part of under Obama. But I'm not sure about what he's saying about Nicaragua and Cuba too. I mean, again, the numbers the biggest.
Oh, I don't know why that stopped there. Yeah. But the biggest driver of immigration to the United States is what? It's we keep cooing, overthrowing governments, and our narco drug war. That's what this is. That's what's causing people to be so desperate that they would leave their own goddamn house, their own country, and go to a foreign country. Why would they be so desperate to do that? It's because we keep wrecking their economy and we keep flooding it with drug money and drug lords. That's what's happening. Here's what Chomsky says.
When we talk about terrorism, it means what they do to us, not what we do to them. And what they do to us can be pretty ugly, although it's not even a fraction of what we do to them. I mean, take, say, 9/11. That was a pretty serious act of terrorism, maybe the worst single act of terrorism in history. But it could have been worse. I mean, suppose, for example, that Al-Qaeda had bombed Washington, bombed the White House. It killed the president, installed a harsh military dictatorship, brought in a bunch of economists who drove the economy into its worst disaster in history. Well, that would have been worse than 9/11. And I'm not making it up. It happened. What's called the first 9/11 in South America, namely in Chile.
On the 11th of September 1973, the democratically elected Chilean president Salvador Allende was overthrown in a coup. A dictatorship under Augusto Pinochet was established that ruled Chile until 1990. There was the systematic suppression of all political dissidents. Thousands were imprisoned and murdered.
Who was involved in that first 9/11? It's not hard to find them. Right in Washington and London and so on. But that's off the agenda. It doesn't count. There's a principle of ideology that we must never look at our own crimes. we should, on the other hand, exult in the crimes of others and in our own nobility in opposing them.
So let me bring in Craig Pasta first. Craig, you know a little bit something about that part of the world. What do you have to say?
Yeah, I mean, I was down in Nicaragua just last year and Honduras as well for these elections, these historic elections. Got to talk to a lot of people out there. And I can tell you from firsthand experience that the number one thing that they're fighting for in these countries is national sovereignty. They want the West off their back. They want the boot of the American empire off their neck. And they want a right to choose their own leaders and to do whatever they want with their own resources and whatnot. And the thing that's really sad about this right now, Jimmy, is that a lot of people still don't know. There's two stories that are really dominating conservative mainstream media. It's this whole Martha Vineyards and moving these immigrants from here to there. And it's being applauded. And the other one is that's being talked about a lot is all the fentanyl. When you talk about the drug war, the fentanyl that's coming up from Mexico. And I think that it's really being pumped in this the conservative mainstream media because they want to manufacture more consent to try and shut the border and say, look what they're doing from the South. They're coming up. This is criminals. They're coming up. People believe the marketing. And it really is a shame. They honestly believe that these places are what Donald Trump referred to them as shithole countries where these people are just trying to come up and find a better way. And they're actually stealing our resources. They don't understand that all these NGOs like the NED, the USAID, they're pumping billions of dollars over the past couple decades, if not century, right? It's been over like 100 years, I think, since we're doing this in Latin America. And that is what's causing the problem. When I was down in Honduras, they talked about the 2017 election, right? A lot of people from Honduras, they said, listen, a lot of our friends went to America because they had lost family members. They were threatened. It was like 10 people were dying every single day at one point. El Salvador had the same problem at one point. They saw America sticking their nose in the business in the 2017 election where the Donald Trump administration backed the results away. Even the OAS said the elections were that fraudulent that they still let him go and let Juan Orlando Hernandez stay in power, that people are saying, that's it, we're going to the States. If you're going to meddle in our business, we're going to come there. And that is the number one cause of migration, and nobody talks about it. And unfortunately, people still believe the marketing. So when we ever have an opportunity, when these situations arise, I think it's up to us, because a lot of people refer to us as the Jimmy Dore left, right? When I spoke at Defeat the Mandates in LA, it was with Max Blumenthal, and some people came up and asked him, it's like, what are you guys all about? They call you the common sense left, the base left. And I said, well, what we're mostly about is anti-imperialism. We have to be screaming at the top of our lungs what's really happening there, what's going on, and why there is a cause for migration. Because if we just pulled away, if we would stop funding these NGOs, if we allow these people to have their own national sovereignty, because it's all about keeping that country chaotic so we can extract the resources there and then thrust our monetary system on these people. But if we stop just doing that, they wouldn't come as much. And that's what needs to be highlighted. And I think a lot of people need to start opening their eyes to this, because a lot of MAGA people, unfortunately, still buy into this marketing that, we're down there like Captain America, helping them out. My mother used to say years ago, she says, Craig, well, if our troops weren't down there, wouldn't they, these people's lives be in danger? I said, Mom, no, that's not the case. They're out there. The same people who are screwing us over in the States, the globalists that we all complain about, those are the same people that are down there stealing the resources and benefiting off the backs of these people which are driving there. You want a wall? I'll give you a wall. Just close the 80 bases and you get your wall.
Yeah. Yeah. Jackson, let me hear what you have to say.
I think Craig nailed it. And what's interesting is, I've been trying to dive into this subject quite a bit and understand what right-wingers are feeling about it. And there's a lot of right-wingers that are mad over the fact that, again, like what we discussed earlier, the fact that these Republican governors are sending what they see as violent criminals further deeper into the interior of the country. I don't believe that. And the stats and the facts show us that actually migrants commit less crimes than citizens of this country. But one other thing I've heard from a lot of right-wingers, they're now waking up to the fact that we actually are the ones who are creating these problems through things like NAFTA, for example. No longer NAFTA, USMCA, which was a little bit better, but not really a huge improvement.
No.
It's still causing problems. And of course, you look at Trump, you look at Biden, you look at any of them, you see the same problems trying to depose leaders like Nicolas Maduro or Daniel Ortega left and right, and that's what causes the problems and why they have to flee here. And the sanctions as well. The United Nations did a report on Venezuela. They found that 99.9% of the crash in Venezuela's economy was a result of Western sanctions that are illegal. So that's what's causing all of this.
And they stole. I mean, they do things about it. Hey, if you don't want Venezuelans moving here as immigrants, why don't you stop stealing their fucking gold?
Yeah, seize their.
They said
the refineries back too as well, because that also happened. You know, and the thing about these governors, I get it too. You know, Jackson pointed out that they don't have they can't vote on NAFTA. They can't make these decisions when it comes to foreign policy. But hey, if you're going to use these people, these humans, and this really is a touchy situation for me. It's why I kind of dove into this whole, you know, independent media thing, because I was so confused at why people were so upset that immigrants were coming, especially when we're a nation of immigrants. You know, I'm Italian, 3rd generation or 4th generation on my father's side. You know, they had a nickname for Italians that came over without papers, right? You know, I don't want to say the other actually what it means because I don't want to get anybody in trouble over here. But, you know, I mean, we came over the same way. We were allowed to come over, our family members. Why are we so angry at these people and have so much disdain? And they always say, hey, you know, they're taking up all our resources. Unfortunately, we just don't have the resources. Well, if you paid attention to how much money and resources were used down over there to drive these people here, you should be equally pissed off. And if any governor like Abbott or DeSantis is a gusano. I mean, we can get into it. Gusano is the term for worm that I believe that Fidel Castro used for a lot of people who were descendants who once stood by the empire. And this guy wants war in the global South. And I certainly suspect that once things end over in the Ukrainian area, we're going to concentrate on the global South over here. If you just see these politicians like Cruz and Rubio, you know, DeSantis said the problem with what's going on down over there is that we never took care of countries like Cuba and Venezuela. And he was talking about the Rensenar Act and Nicaragua. Well, if you're going to use these people, these humans, as pawns, you better damn well be screaming at the top of your lungs of why there's a problem in the first place. And there's a ton of money. The same stuff that's going down in Ukraine is the same thing that's been going down in the global South for God knows how long. We need to stop it.
It's a problem of our own making. That's bipartisan. It's Democrat, Republican. And so, of course, the United States and their corporate news media are being distracted by the show instead of telling us what the actual root problem is. And the root problem is American imperialism once again.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's causing this. You got a problem with the immigrants coming to the United States? Stop fucking with their country. Stop doing imperialism. That's the problem. No one will tell you that on television. Is Tucker Carlson talking about that? I haven't seen. Has anybody seen?
Anya went on his show. He allowed Anya Parampal on the show. In fact, that's the one area I think when Anya Parampal went on that show and they talked about it, they did talk about the intervention leading to a poor working class in which could be exploited by the rich class in the United States. And that's also another reason why, not just a resource extraction and the forcing of the monetary system, but the cheap labor, baby. It comes over with that.
Oh, so they did talk about it. So that would be the only show on corporate news, I bet, any money that would talk about the actual cause of the immigration. If there's someone else, please send me a link. I'd like to feature it, but I bet there won't be. Virginia Beach, Richmond, Arlington, San Jose, Miami, West Palm Beach. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for all the tickets and become a premium member while you're there.